The internet will tell you that in 1987, the Golden Gate Bridge almost came down. 800,000 people, a deck that sagged 7 feet, a span about to give way. There is a photo everyone shares, the famous orange bridge with its center flattened, the graceful arch simply gone. We went through every number in that story, and most of them are wrong. But the strangest part is not the myth. The bridge really did flatten that day, under the heaviest load it has ever carried. And the reason it held is something almost nobody mentions. It was May 24th, 1987. The bridge was turning 50 years old, and the district that runs it decided to do something it had done once before, on opening day in 1937. Close the roadway to cars and let people walk across. They expected maybe 50,000. They planned for a pleasant morning. By 5:30 that morning, the pleasant morning was gone. Hundreds of thousands of people were pouring onto the deck, from both ends at once, from the San Francisco side and the Marin side, and they met in the middle. Then they stopped. The crowd packed so tight that people could not move their arms. Some stood in one spot for 2 hours. Strollers were abandoned on the roadway. There was seasickness and there was fear, because up on the towers the wind was pushing the bridge, and a suspension bridge is supposed to move, but the people standing on it did not know that. For anyone caught in the middle, there was no fast way off, just hundreds of yards of packed crowd in either direction. That was when the roadway began to change shape in front of them. The Golden Gate has a gentle arch to it, a rise in the center you can see in every postcard. That morning, the arch flattened out and disappeared. A San Francisco contractor named Winston Montgomery, stuck in the crowd near the center, wrote later that he stood there wondering with his wife whether they were about to take part in one of the great disasters of the century. So let us start with the number everyone repeats: 800,000 people on the bridge. That number is real, but it is describing the wrong thing. According to the Golden Gate Bridge, Highway and Transportation District, about 300,000 people were actually on the deck at the peak. The other 400,000 to 500,000 were in the parks and the streets around the bridge, waiting, watching, trying to get on. Add it up, and you reach the 800,000 figure. But that is the total turnout for the whole event, not the crowd standing on the span. And 300,000 is still an enormous number of people to put on a single bridge deck at one time. PBS put it plainly years later. Around 800,000 people tried to cross, and 300,000 stood on the deck at the same time. And here is the part that matters. The district had expected about 50,000 walkers. What showed up was 6 times that. Nobody planned for 300,000 bodies standing still on a bridge at once. And when a crowd that size stops moving on the Golden Gate, the bridge does something you can actually measure. The second number is the 7 feet. The story says the center of the bridge sagged 7 feet under the weight, and people usually repeat it like it was the moment of disaster. The real figure appears to be worse. An engineering report written for the bridge's 50th anniversary by Pollalis and Otto put the deflection at almost 10 feet at the middle of the span. A Stanford engineering professor, Greg Dyerline, confirmed that a fully loaded suspension bridge the size of the Golden Gate can drop close to 10 feet, and that this is completely normal. So the correction runs the other way. The bridge did not sag less than the story claims. It sagged more. Then why is almost 10 feet not a catastrophe? Because the Golden Gate Bridge was built to move that far. The design allows the center of the span to travel about 10.8 feet straight down before anything is even close to wrong. During the winter storms of 1982, the main span had already bowed 6 to 7 feet on its own, with nobody on it at all. The crowd in 1987 pushed it further than a storm had, and it still landed inside the range the engineers had drawn on paper decades earlier. Which brings us to the number the myth gets right, before it ruins it. The weight. Nobody counted the exact tonnage of people on the bridge that morning, but engineers have estimated it. A crowd packed shoulder to shoulder, at about 150 pounds a person standing in roughly 2.5 square feet, works out to around 5,400 pounds for every single foot of the bridge's length. That is more than double the weight of the same bridge jammed bumper to bumper with cars. A dense standing crowd is one of the heaviest loads a bridge can ever be asked to carry, heavier than traffic, heavier than almost anything short of the structure itself. Unlike a line of cars, a packed crowd leaves no gaps and never rolls off the far end, which is why a bridge deck feels it more than rush hour. Now set that against what the bridge was rated for. After the roadway was rebuilt with a lighter steel deck in 1986, the Golden Gate could carry about 5,700 pounds per foot. The crowd brought roughly 5,400, so this was almost certainly the heaviest live load the bridge had carried in 50 years of standing, and it was sitting right up near the edge of the number on the drawings. That is the fact that should frighten you, and for most of the internet, that is exactly where the story stops, with the bridge on the brink. But the people who actually did the math were not standing on the brink. They were calm. Even the president of the bridge's board, Gary Giacomini, standing out at the center of the span, looked up at the main cables and thought to himself that this had been a mistake. He was watching it with his eyes. After the event, the district's chief engineer, Daniel Mohn, went back and ran the numbers on what those 300,000 people had done to his bridge, and he confirmed the structure was never overstressed. Not close. Another engineer who worked on the Golden Gate, Charles Ellis, said it even more bluntly. Even at the full design load of 5,700 pounds per foot, the tension in the main cables only reaches about 40% of the point where the steel would begin to yield. That is a safety factor of roughly 2.5. The cables were never straining. They were working at less than half of what they could take. Years later, when the near-collapse story spread across social media, the fact-checking site PolitiFact examined the claim that the bridge almost failed and rated it false. So here is where the myth and the truth split apart completely. The crowd on the deck genuinely believed the Golden Gate was about to drop into the bay. The engineers who understood it were not worried at all. Same bridge, same morning, two completely different stories. And the reason those engineers stayed calm is the real answer to what happened that day. That answer is the whole reason this bridge is still standing. Quick thing first. If you have ever stood on the Golden Gate or driven across it, take a second and subscribe. This is what we do here. Take the famous numbers about the machines and the structures you already know, and check whether they are actually true. There is a lot of it, and most of it does not survive the check. Now, back to why this bridge refused to break. The Golden Gate Bridge survived 300,000 people for the same reason it survives the wind, and it comes down to a single idea that sounds backwards at first. The bridge is strong because it is allowed to bend. When it was designed in the early 1930s, the lead engineer on the calculations was a man named Charles Ellis, working from a principle called deflection theory. The idea, pushed by the engineer Leon Moissafe, was that a long suspension bridge should not stand rigid against a load. It should flex. When weight comes down on the deck, the roadway bends, and that bend pulls on the vertical suspender ropes, which pull on the two main cables, which carry the force out to the towers and down into the massive anchorages at each end. The load gets spread across the entire structure instead of being fought in one spot. Think of a tall tree in a storm. The one that can sway with the wind rides it out, while the stiff trunk that fights the wind is the one that cracks. A stiff bridge would have resisted those 300,000 people and cracked somewhere. This bridge took the weight, flattened, pushed the load out to its cables, and when the crowd finally left, it rose back up into its arch. The moment the weight came off, the steel and the cables pulled the deck back to exactly where it had started, the way they had after every storm for 50 years. It bent so that it would not break. And there is a second piece, and it is still bolted under the roadway right now. In 1940, a suspension bridge in Washington called the Tacoma Narrows twisted itself apart in the wind and collapsed, and it frightened every engineer who had built something like it. So in 1953 and 1954, crews went back to the Golden Gate and added a lower lateral bracing system, a lattice of steel underneath the deck that tied the whole span together and stiffened it against twisting. That bracing is still down there today. It is part of the reason the deck could take an uneven, shifting, wind-blown crowd and stay steady. The thing that kept the bridge from breaking in 1987 was designed and bolted into it decades before anyone walked across. That same engineer, Charles Ellis, left one more mark you can still visit. Underneath the southern end of the bridge sits Fort Point, a brick fortress finished in 1861, before the Civil War. The original plans for the bridge called for tearing it down. The chief engineer, Joseph Strauss, refused, and Ellis designed a single steel arch to carry the roadway up and over it. It is the only arch on the entire bridge, and the fort is still standing underneath it. If it looks familiar, it is the spot where Alfred Hitchcock filmed The Fall in Vertigo. It is the reason there is a lone arch tucked under the south end at all, a piece of 19th century military stonework the modern bridge simply stepped over instead of erasing. As for the walk itself, the district learned its lesson. When the bridge turned 75 in 2012, they were asked to open the roadway to people again, and they said no. They have never closed the Golden Gate to traffic for a crowd since. What happened in 1987 has happened exactly once, and now you know why it did not end the way the internet says it almost did. If you want another one of these, we went looking for what is really buried under Mount St. Helens next. Same idea. A famous number that does not hold up once you check it. We will see you in that one.